Or using this computer and if I get your video. Because I have access to your.
Hey, so good morning. Thank you guys for coming in person and on Zoom. Sorry. No idea. Okay, so what we did on Monday was basically take a practice test on Blue Book. If you guys didn't or don't have access to Blue Book, what we did was just take either a random practice test on Khan Academy or one that's already online through PDF. Okay, so it was just, we just wanted you to take a test. We just wanted to see where you are. Preferably it was number 6. Practice test number 6 is what we're gonna be reviewing today. If anything, if you guys took an alternate test or, something on Khan Academy and you want like specific, like one-on-one kind of help in regards to that, I believe on Friday, Fabio will be hosting like office hours. So you could go to him personally and ask him questions about that specific test. But if you took number 6, then we're gonna be doing that today. Okay? Good news, future.
That is from the keyboard, so.
Let me screen share.
Yeah.
Screen what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Full screen.
Yeah.
Are you gonna start with the first question? Do you know? And
Okay. Can you guys see my screen? Thumbs up? No? Yes in the chat? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Oh. Okay. Done with this?
so. The allocate, are you Zoom?
Yeah. It's up there. It's up there. I don't think.
Do we know what other?
It's right.
Wait, so where's people?
You just closed it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Alright, so we're gonna get started with the first question, so. First. It says, it gives the passage that says, whether Carmen Lomas Garza is creating small paintings and illustrations for large public artworks. Such as Baile, a copper cutout of traditional Mexican dance in the San Francisco International Airport, she is blank. So she's something by direct experience. Drawing from memories of her childhood in Texas or details of her current surroundings in Colorado. And then basically what it's asking us is to fill in that blank with the most logical and precise word or phrase from this. These answers. So it could be, she is complimented by direct experience. She is uncertain about direct experience, she is unbothered by direct experience, or she is inspired by direct experience. So do one of you wanna hear what you think it is?
Inspired by.
Inspired by? Alright, do you have like a reasoning, or do you just like, that's what sounds best to you?
It's because she's like drawing like from her memory.
Yeah.
I think it's just like he's inspired by their past memories.
Like
To draw.
what it's talking about is kind of like her artistic process, how she makes art. And what it ends off by saying is that the way that she makes art is by being inspired by drawing from memories of her childhood. So that's her direct experience. By creating art from her memories, she's being inspired by her experience. So in this case, D will be the correct answer. So does anyone have any questions about this one?
We all get it? If you didn't get it,
Yeah.
then you let us know. We're here to
Please.
review. Anyone in the chat, if you ever didn't get a question correct, just type it in the chat and we will be responding to you in the chat. Okay?
These can be like harder or easier, especially because these kind of might just be phrases you know, but sometimes they can be like hard words and stuff, so you might want to look out for the word and phrase. But should we?
It's I think you're wrong. Okay, so. That should be fun. Okay, so number 2 reads. Number 2 reads, disproving the common misconception of native art as blank. The painters whose work appears in the collection at the National Museum of the American Indian employ a range of styles. There are artists working in the traditional arts of specific tribal communities, artists working in European modernist or American abstract expressionist art traditions, and artists blending various traditions into something really new. Oh, okay. So, with choice best completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase. So we have A, uncontroversial, B, individualistic, C, theoretical, and D, homogenic. Oh, Evan, do you have? Wait, what? No. Evan, you can talk. I don't know if you want to.
I thought you asked if anybody had the answer.
Oh, okay. No, yeah, for sure. You can tell me the answer.
D, homogeneous.
Okay, do you want to give us an explanation as to why you picked that, or?
So we're disproving something, so whatever's in the part after the blank has to be the opposite of our answer.
Yeah.
And in the part after the blank, it talks about how there's a range of styles. There's a lot of different things. And in the answers, it can't be B. Because that's would be proving, it can't be B. A and C have nothing to do with it, so the answer is D, homogeneous, even if you don't know the meaning of the word.
It's like, it's good to see the process of elimination for sure, and I just want to point out. It's useful to try to be able to identify when what it's asking you to put is something that like kind of negates the rest, right? So a lot of time, like here they put disproving because. The answer choice that we're choosing, in this case homogeneous, is opposite to what is actually going on in the text, right? It's saying that though. The painters employ a range of style. Homogeneous means, so you can kind of take homo, that means same, so homogeneous means kind of everything in one culture is the same, right? So here, when it's saying that the painters in one culture employ a range of styles, you're kind of going against the idea that the culture is homogeneous. So it's saying disproving the idea that it's homogeneous, these painters are employing a range of styles. So it's just saying that's opposite to homogeneous, and that's another way. Does anybody on Zoom or here have any questions about this one or?
Okay, number 3. Recent measurements of the mass of the W boson a subatomic particle were notable not only for the mere fact that the particle's mass differed from expectations, but for the blank of that difference. The measured mass of the W boson was 7 standard deviations higher than predicted by the standard model of particle physics. Okay. That was a whole lot of yap, I know. As I always say with book up questions, you can pretty much ignore like this thing, because this is gonna be the same for all of them. It's just gonna be like complete the blank. So what you should focus on is the actual thing over here and the sentence that is in. Okay, so what is this saying? So I'm just gonna like summarize really quickly. So it says firstly that there were measurements that were taken of this thing, a W boson. I'm just gonna call it a V because I don't really care. So measurements were taken and they were notable, meaning they were important. not just because the math was different from what they thought, but because of something related to that difference. So we don't know what that something is, but something also makes it notable / important, okay? And then they tell us what it is. So when they give us a little colon. So a colon is either to introduce a list. Or it acts as a period, but also meant to introduce like additional data related to what you were talking about. So if you see a colon, it'll either be a definition or additional details, something related to what they said in the sentence before. So after this colon, it tells us something about this difference. It tells us that the measured mass of the B, because I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that, was 7 standard deviations higher. Okay, so it has something to do with size. We're looking for something that relates to size. So we're gonna use process of elimination, right? Just anything here relates to size, right? I think this one's like a pretty easy question, which is why I'm not gonna, go over like, oh, what do you guys think? Your reasoning, because I'm gonna leave that more for the harder questions, so we have time. But they're not talking about cause and effect, right? In this entire statement, they're not talking about cause and effect, they're talking about a difference, right? So something here is different and it relates to size. So cause is not related. Existence. Is anything here philosophical, talking about whether or not this exists, whether it doesn't exist, whether No, it tells us there is a difference. Yeah. But then it's telling us something about that difference related to size is important. So that's not B either. Implication, if I am implying something to you, right, that means I'm like suggesting something. So this is talking about maybe results, right? Did it say here anything about the results of that difference? What that difference means for researchers or for students or for anyone studying the subject? No, it doesn't mention that at all. And then scale, well, scale, when you think of a scale, think of something expanding, something contracting, right? That relates to size. So if we plug it in here, it says that the measurements were notable, not just for the mere fact that the particle's mass differed from expectations, but for the scale of that difference, meaning how big that difference was. And then that's in the following sentence, it says it was 7 standard deviations higher. This is talking about that scale. It's talking about how big or small that difference was. Okay, so do we see why it's D? Yes, no, maybe so. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Alright. I wanted to breeze through that one because there are harder questions like later on as opposed to these these vocab questions. And I don't want to waste your time here, so. Do you guys want me to do the next one? Yeah. You want? Okay. We're gonna just start rotating now, I guess.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so number 4 reads. Birds sing to communicate over potentially great distances. For this reason, many researchers believe that birds in densely vegetated habitats generally sing at lower frequencies than birds living in comparatively sparse habitats. Since dense vegetation tends to blank the distance that high frequency sounds can travel. Okay, so obviously same thing, which word choice is most logical. Okay, A, we have exceed, B, diminish, C, encompass, and D, conceal. Does anyone, either in person? Anyone? Do you want to tell me? Do you? Yeah.
B, diminish.
Okay, why do we think it's B?
Okay, so they're talking about, well, basically, I just saw that they're talking about dense vegetation, and so it's something is dense, it's kind of large, right? So, and also talking about distance that high frequency sounds can travel. Since something that's dense is big, right? It can basically diminish the distance that the high frequency sounds can travel. That's it.
Okay, so obviously diminish means to like lower, so say that this is a possible choice, but let's go through every single one. So if we were to place exceed here, it would, what this paragraph would be telling us is that in dense vegetation, the frequency is exceeded, but that's not what they're telling us because obviously it's harder to exceed a frequency in a very like large area than in a rather like, comparatively small one, okay? So not exceed. Then let's go to conceal. Do we know what conceal means?
To like, contain almost.
Sure, to like, hide to, sure, okay? So it would be telling us here that dense vegetation tends to conceal the distance that high frequency sounds can travel. Nothing is gonna be hidden, the sound is still gonna travel, okay? So nothing in this paragraph, in these two sentences tells us that dense vegetation will conceal the distance that high frequency sounds can travel, okay? So right now, still diminish is looking like the most promising answer. And encompass, do we think encompass is correct? Why? Anyone on Zoom? No? Yes, no? Okay. Good talk. Anyone here? Encompass. So if you. Okay, that's fine, don't worry, everyone. If we would put encompass in this, does it make sense knowing what we know? If you read it, does it make sense? Why? You tell me why. Just tell me what you think, it doesn't matter.
Cause like encompass is like. I don't know how to say it. It's like to like find something.
Yeah, it's like, to have inside, so there, nothing here, again, it's always what you're reading, you can't just assume that the dense vegetation will, lead to like higher frequency traveling. So it's not telling us anything, it's actually telling us that birds in densely vegetated habitats are, sing at lower frequencies. So, how would that lead to dense vegetation? Meaning that distance will, that high frequency sounds can travel, okay? So it's gonna be B. I'm gonna glitch it out.
Is it like fully frozen? Go to clear my drawings and see it.
Guys, the board started like malfunctioning. So it's screen recording, but we can't access it for a sec. So bear with us.
Hey guys, just to let you guys know, it looks like the smartboard in the room is having some technical issues, so we're gonna go ahead and take like a 10-minute break. We might have to change rooms just to keep you guys in the know. Sorry about this.
On the bright side, either way, it's shorter than when Fabio does his like 30-minute intro segment. So y'all are gonna survive.
Alright, guys, we're gonna be starting back up in like 5 minutes. The computer turned back on, just to let you guys know. I'm so sorry about the technical issues.
Alright, guys, thank you for bearing with us. We are going to now put the test back, don't you worry. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Alright. We can, this one. Alright. We need to share your screen, we have Justin next up, for so it's my turn. There you go. Kimberly, you gave the answer, do you want to
Yeah.
do a final wrap up or?
She's given the answer. For anyone that doesn't remember, the answer was B, diminished, and he already gave explanation, so I don't know what you heard.
Alright. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Alright, number 5. Okay. So this one's asking for main purpose, so if you like, now that you see like, the longer answer choices, now you just start paying attention to this and what they have. So it says the following text is from Betty Smith's 1943 novel, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Francie and go visit the library often. This little blurb, try not to skip it, if you are really like on a time crunch. You can, I advise against it because sometimes there is stuff in there that helps you. So again, if you're in a time crunch, that is what you cut out, but if you have the time, just try to read it. Now I'm gonna actually start. So Francie thought that all the books in the world were in the library and she had a plan about reading all the books in the world. She was reading a book a day in alphabetical order and not skipping the dry ones. She remembered that the first author had been Abbott. She had been reading a book a day for a long time now, and when she was still in bees. Already she had read about bees and buffaloes, Bermuda vacations and Byzantine architecture. For all her enthusiasm, she had to admit that some of the bees had been hard going, but Francie was a reader. Okay, so what is this paragraph kind of saying, right? So it's saying that Francie, I almost like started writing with actual like expo. So it says that Francie had a plan. This plan was to read all the books in the world. And then from here to here, it talks about kind of what she wants to do to get to that goal. So she's reading a book a day, she's not skipping the dry ones, so she's, she's very dedicated to this cause. She had been reading a book a day and was still in the bees. So this girl is really hardworking. And then it says she's read about all this stuff so far, so all this is just details saying how much and how the variety that she's read. And then it says that though some were hard, she was a reader. Okay. So it's asking us about main purpose, which is why I gave like a really brief summary of all the sentences. So let's see. Can anyone from like in person or the Zoom tell me kind of, or unmute yourself, like what you think the answer is and maybe your reasoning as to how you got there? I'm seeing one in person.
C, to portray the determination to meet a goal.
Okay. Let me just. Yeah, okay. So can you tell us how you got to C?
Because it says how she wanted to read every book in the alphabet and she didn't even skip the dry ones.
Precisely, so, okay, so you got the answer right, I'm gonna kind of just quickly skim over like why the wrong ones are wrong, but I don't think this one was pretty hard, so. The first one, to illustrate Francis' enjoyment of an unusual topic, so first things first, when you see opinions in something about a main text. don't write it off per se, but be a little skeptical, right? Because, you know, who are we to say that this is unusual, right? We might find her reading unusual, but someone who's a reader, who's an avid reader, who loves reading, might genuinely read a book a day and love it, right? So when you see something like this, right, it's one of those cases where, who are we to say? It's not objective, it's not something that you can measure. And then, again, like, it's not illustrating her enjoyment per se, because she even had to read dry ones, it talks about how it was difficult for her to read the dry ones. It's more so about her dedication, okay? So it's not A. And then B, to explain why Francie prefers reading over other activities. Do we ever see a comparison? Do we ever see anything about her reading instead of, you know, playing basketball, or instead of, you know, playing football, or instead of playing video games, right? Like, no, we have nothing about that. So there's no comparison. Prefers, right? There's nothing about preference. C, we already know why it's C. She establishes a goal in this first sentence to read all the books in the world, and then all this kind of leads up to that. So C is our answer, and then D, to describe a book that Francie greatly admires. Though we name books here, she doesn't stop and talk about one book for a long time. She doesn't tell us details, doesn't tell us, you know, oh, I like this book because X, Y, and Z, right? So that's why it's not D. Did we all understand it?
Mhm.
Yes, no, maybe so. Evander, you're gonna break your neck a little bit there. Yes, we got it?
I just got
Alright.
kicked out of the meeting for a moment.
Don't worry, thank you. Oh, that's not great.
Thank you.
Alright,
If you look at a map, the book will have one in the back.
Yeah, if you wanna, we're doing practice, that's the way you look.
Alright. Does it matter which one?
Alright, so we're gonna go ahead and do this one now, so it says, is in the passage. The people of medieval Europe traditionally been seen as uninterested in cleanliness and hygiene. That's just a general statement that we're making. Europeans are traditionally uninterested in cleanliness and hygiene, right? But modern research has shown that this is largely a myth, right? So maybe this is kind of giving us like a claim, right? So according to right, sorry for that.
Yeah.
It just kicked all of you guys out by accident. Perfect. So you guys can see. Alright, I'll just go with this question again. So it was the passage, it's kind of social science thing, which we see with types of questions like these, so it's saying an initial thing. People of Europe have traditionally been seen as,
We can't see the screen.
oh, yeah, that's right. Thank you for pointing that out. No. Right, it says the people of medieval Europe have traditionally been uninterested with cleanliness and hygiene, but then it kind of says it's a claim. Modern research has shown that this is largely a myth, right? So now it's gonna give us examples why this is a myth, right? So it's saying, according to historian Eleanor Janega, most medieval towns in Europe have at least one public bathhouse. So medieval towns have one public bathhouse, that's one of her reasons. Which offered full immersion baths and more affordably steam baths. Right, and now it kind of says, while such amenities were available mainly to town dwellers, so it's saying. These public bathhouses only happen in like towns and stuff in Europe, right? Because obviously, like people, rural Europeans wouldn't have access to bathhouses in towns. And say regular bathing in rivers and streams or daily sponge baths at home were common practice. So it's saying, even if they can have access to public bathhouses. They still had, like, they would still wash themselves either way, right? So it's asking us about the function of the underlying portion, right? So maybe we think the passage as a whole is kind of giving a comprehensive. Like display of how Europeans actually were interested in cleanliness, but now it's asking specifically about that phrase, which says, while such amenities were available mainly to town dwellers. So I'm gonna try to focus in on this phrase, later on it, and now check the answer. So that it asserts that in medieval Europe, steam baths were more popular in rural areas than in urban ones. Well, like this is kind of built on the presumption of what's opposite to that, right? Because it's saying these were only available to town dwellers. So if you lived in a rural area, you wouldn't have access to that. Like people who didn't live in a town could not use a public bathhouse. So it kind of has it flipped around, and that's just going to automatically be wrong, right? Now it says, it describes a limitation of earlier historian studies of medieval European daily habits. This one, it kind of might get you because it says limitation, but when it says a limitation of earlier historian studies, that would kind of imply that you're pointing out a flaw in maybe their research method or something. So what this really is here is kind of a limitation in their argument, maybe. So I wouldn't really want to use this one, but I'm gonna mark this as a no as well. Now, see, it says it concedes that not all people in medieval Europe had access to public bathhouses. Literally, what this says is those amenities, the amenities being the public bathhouse, was only available to people who lived in the town. So that is conceding that not everyone had access to the bathhouse, because they use that to show that everyone in some way engage with hygiene. So I'm going to mark this one. But then also, I don't want to ignore D, so I'm gonna see what it says. It says it explains why Janega decided to study the popularity of public bathhouses, and maybe that would be more the first sentence of the hook, but that one doesn't really answer that specific phrase of saying that those amenities were only available to people who live in towns. So in this case, it would be C. It's kind of the only one that just makes sense when you actually consider that phrase only. But do you guys have any kind of questions about this one? Cause this one is kind of one where you kind of have to laser in one part maybe. And you might have issues with that. Anyone have a question? Anyone on Zoom?
Remember, you can always chat
Do you know how to put it that like it's actually
the right, like that one.
this? Oh, okay. That's fine. So I guess we can move on to the next one. Right here.
Go up.
Yeah, it wasn't like challenge. Now this next one. Also kind of a purpose function one, this is kind of the ones you'll find in the beginning. When classical pianist Martha Argerich performs, it appears as if the music is coming to her spontaneously. So it's kind of setting the scene, saying like, whenever she performs, she's like performing it really well, and it looks like she's just doing it spontaneously. She's highly skilled technically, but because of how freely she plays and her willingness to take risks, she seems relaxed and natural. So she seems relaxed and natural. It looks like it's coming to her spontaneously. It's kind of describing how she looks like. It's describing her appearance when she is playing the piano, right? Now it's kind of going to start describing what they call her apparent ease. And they're saying it is due to a tremendous amount of preparation, right? So it's kind of saying, like the reason why she looks so skilled and why it looks like she's relaxed and natural when she's doing like such a skill is because of her preparation, right? It's saying because of a tremendous amount of preparation. Despite her experience and virtuosity, she never takes for granted that she knows a piece of music, right? So she never takes for granted that she knows a piece of music because she's always preparing, she's always prepared, and that's why it looks so natural. And then it says, indeed, she approaches the music as if she's encountering it for the first time and tries to understand it anew. So she tries to understand pieces, and that's how she kind of gets to play so good, right? That's kind of what I'm getting. Now it's asking, what's the main purpose? The main purpose, I would say, is just saying that the reason why she's able to look so relaxed and natural while she's playing is because of how much she prepares. Honestly. So now I'm gonna read those questions and see, or those answers and see if that's right. So the first one said, to provide details how she identifies with pieces of music she will perform, right? I mean, it talks more about her, like, maybe how she prepares, or maybe how she looks when she's playing, but it doesn't really say about her identifying with her music. I wouldn't really get that from either of those, like either of the information it presents us, so I would just scratch that one off immediately. From a purpose standpoint, because that's not the purpose at all. Then it says to assert how her performances look effortless because she prepares for them. Her performances look effortless is definitely something I could get from the passage, because it's saying it looks like it's coming to her spontaneously. She's highly skilled technically. She seems relaxed and natural, like it looks effortless, right? That's kind of something emotional with both. And then, like the whole thing, it's saying it's due to a tremendous amount of preparation. So it is because of how she prepares for them. So this would be some like an answer I will mark down, because that is quite literally what it's doing. But I'm still gonna go with these two, see if I can disprove them. Let's discuss the kind of music she feels comfortable encountering for the first time. Maybe the last sentence that says she approaches all music as she's encountering it for the first time, but it doesn't really talk about any kinds of music or when she encounters it. I would mark that one up too. To describe the unique way that she approaches music she hasn't performed before. Maybe the last sentence, but once again, it's not really talking about how she approaches music. So in this case, I would choose B. But does anyone have any questions about? I was kind of asking this time about the whole passage, maybe? Anyone have any questions here on Zoom? Alright, how am I doing? You wanna do 8? Yep. Ready? Love the excitement. So, we already established it. Ooh. Cross connection, alright. This one's a little harder. Sure. Okay. So, I mean, right off the bat, this one looks different than the rest. We have 2 passages as opposed to 1. So when you see this, it's gonna ask you a few things. It might either do like a cause and effect, it might do a comparison difference, it might do something about whether or not one of them agrees with the other or where their difference lies, etc. So just be prepared to like start, drawing connections, okay? So in this case, we do want to read the question because sometimes it asks us about what one author in particular is going to think. And in this case, it's asking what the author of text 2 would respond to this part specifically of text 1, okay? So let's first read both. So in text 1, an excavation in, I'm not even going to try to read that, in Sea Cave in central Mexico has upended the belief that approximately 13,000 years ago, a group known as the Clovis people were the first human inhabitants of North America. More than 200 crude stone tools were found embedded in a layer of earth that is up to 33,150 years old. And then this is the part that matters. Revealing that humans occupied the cave thousands of years before the Clovis people reached the continent. So this is the claim that we're talking about, okay? So the claim is that humans occupied the caves thousands of years before. And how did we reach that claim? Because of 200 crude stone tools. Okay. Now text 2. The objects uncovered in, I'm not even gonna try to read that again, Sea Cave are intriguing, but it is premature to characterize them as tools. But it is premature to characterize them as tools. The stone pieces are so roughly shaped that they may have simply fractured from rocks during natural geological activity in the cave. Moreover, their unearthing has thus far not been accompanied by discoveries of other signs of human activity. So, thus far has not been accompanied by discoveries of other signs of human activity, or even traces of human DNA from surfaces. Okay, so the first one is basically saying that these stone tools are found in this cave that support that humans occupied the cave thousands of years before the Clovis people reached the continent. Okay. The text 2 is then saying it's honestly not super fair to even call them tools at all because they could have been formed naturally, so we don't really have a ton of evidence to say that humans actually carved them, and there are no other signs of human activity or human DNA. Okay, so
Wait, let me just scroll down so you guys can see all the answers. Okay. So based off of just this. What would you guys say is the answer, and can you give me your reasoning? So if we can have someone on the Zoom or in person, this one's a little longer, so I just need more time, but. Evander, well, do you have a sticky note? Oh, okay, you could have just unmuted, but whatever. Okay, so you say B, can you tell us why you say B, or do you have to be on mute?
Because text 2 is basically saying these tools, quotation marks, aren't even tools. So it's basically useless to use them as a marker of any sort of humans in the area. So I chose B because that's just what it's saying, that it rests on an assumption about the stone pieces, that they're stone tools, that isn't sufficiently supported by available evidence. Because in text 2, you see their unearthing has thus far not been accompanied by discoveries of other signs of human activities or even traces of human DNA from surfaces. So that's why I picked B.
Alright, so you'll be correct, it is B, so let's break down B really quickly, so like Evander said, B is correct because it says that. This little line over here rests on an assumption about the stone pieces that is not sufficiently supported. What is that assumption? The assumption that these are stone tools, because it says it is premature to characterize them as tools. So if you don't know what premature means, I mean, I assume most of us do, but if you don't know, if you ever watch like Grey's Anatomy or something and they say a baby came out prematurely, it means before term, before it was supposed to. And then if you break it down, pre means before, mature means when something is, like established, or, in case of humans, adult, right? So it's saying that, it's too early to characterize them as tools because we don't have enough evidence, right? So that's why B is correct. And then if we look at A, it says, suggestion that draws a plausible connection between the two groups of people, but needs to be confirmed with further study. The text 2 does not actually say anything about a plausible connection. In fact, it says that there's likely no connection at all because the stone pieces could have not come from humans, period. So that's why A is wrong. It also doesn't say anything about further study, and it just completely doubts the claim. So instead of saying more evidence is needed, about more studies by different group of people, it doesn't say that. It just says that current evidence is not enough. It doesn't say about getting more. Then C, by acknowledging that it will most likely be proved correct when the stone pieces undergo more detailed analysis. Again, there is nothing here saying that, more analysis is likely to prove X, Y, and Z, right? It just says current evidence, not enough. It doesn't suggest anything about doing more studies, doing more analysis, performing more experiments, etc. So C is also wrong. And then D fails to account for evidence as a close people were active on the continent as it is commonly thought. So this, you might say like, oh, fails to account for evidence, and you might be like, okay, that's our answer. But from here on, this is not the reasoning that's given there. The reasoning that's given in the paragraph is about the stone pieces not being tools. It's about the fact that there's a lack of DNA evidence, right? This is more of an assumption and it's not really talked about in the passage. So because this second part, which is like the reasoning, the backbone of the argument is wrong, even though this first part is right, our answer is wrong, which is why the answer is B, okay? So do you guys get it? Or do we need an explanation? Are we good? Okay. Anybody who wants to do that?
Yes. Okay, so. 9. Okay. Many literary theorists distinguish between fabula, a narrative's content. So. And I'm not even gonna try it once I have no idea, so. SAT, which is a narrative's arrangement and presentation of events. In the film The Godfather Part 2, the fabula is the story of the Corleone family, and the Pronto is a presentation of the story as it alternates between two timelines in 1901 and 1958. So in this specific movie, the fabula is the story of the family. And then the Suzette, I have no idea, is the presentation of the story. Okay, as it alternates between two different times. But, okay, so this is suggesting like a shift, a change. We're saying but. Lavender, do you already have something? I'll pick on you when I ask for the answer, okay? Perfect. But literary theorist Mikhail Bakhtin maintains that fabula and Suzette, I don't know, are insufficient to completely describe a narrative. He held that systematic categorizations of artistic phenomena discount the subtle way in which meaning is created by interactions between the artist, the work, and the audience. So basically says that these two are not sufficient to describe a narrative because there are these categorizations of phenomena that discount the subtle way. Ooh. Discount the subtle way in which meaning is created by interactions. Basically, what we read is that there's a thing such as a fabula, which is a narrative content, and a Suzette, which is a narrative arrangement presentation of events. Then the next sentence tells us how this fabula and Suzette relates to the film The Godfather Part 1, and that this theorist just says that these two are insufficient to effectively describe a narrative. Okay, that's basically what we read. Let's go through the answer choices, and then Evan, you don't have to scroll. Okay, so A, literary theorist Mikhail argued that there are important characteristics of narratives that are not fully encompassed by two concepts that other theorists have used to analyze narratives. B, literary theorist Mikhail claimed that meaning is not inherent in a narrative, but is created when an audience encounters a narrative so that narratives are interpreted differently by different people. C, the storytelling methods used in The Godfather Part 2, may seem unusually complicated, but they can be easily understood when two concepts from the literary theory are utilized. And D, narratives that are told out of chronological order are more difficult for audiences to understand than are narratives presented chronologically. Okay, Evander, do you want to tell me? I guess you can see all of them there. Do you want to tell me what you thought?
I thought it was A because, should I say why?
Yeah, for sure.
So B is a lie, that's fake news, that's propaganda, whatever you want to call it. It's never mentioned in the passage. C is not what we're talking about. We're not talking about The Godfather Part 2. That was just an example. It's not the main point of this text. And we aren't even talking about D either. That was not even mentioned. Once again, if we're just looking at the passage, that's fake news, that's a lie. So A is the only one that seems right, and if you look at the passage, that is literally what's said in the passage, just reworded.
Okay, absolutely. A is the correct answer, but you know what? We're still gonna go through each answer choice just in case. So A, Tata Mikhail is arguing that these two important characteristics, which is the fabula, do not are not fully encompassed by these two concepts. Okay, so if we go back to the paragraph, he said right here that the fabula and the Suzette are insufficient to completely describe a narrative. And then he goes on to say that there are some parts that these two concepts don't cover, such as the interactions between the artist and the work and the audience. Okay, so definitely if we look at A, we can find that it is in the text, so it is likely going to be the correct answer. Okay, so let's go to B. So Evander said that B was a complete lie, okay? So B is telling us that meaning is not inherent in a narrative, but it's created when an audience encounters a narrative, so that narratives are interpreted differently by different people. What? Like what? Like, do you guys even know what you just read? Probably not. Doesn't make any sense, and nothing in here ever tells us that, narratives are going to be interpreted differently by different people, okay? Remember, always look at what you have in these sentences. Don't assume. Obviously, narratives can be interpreted differently by different people, but it's not what this says here. So we can't just assume and say that that is correct. And either way, the theorist does not say anything that a meaning is not inherent. That is not mentioned whatsoever in his reasoning as to why the fabula and the Suzette are insufficient. Okay, so B is not the correct answer. C, the storytelling method. So basically telling us that in The Godfather, the methods of storytelling are complicated, but they can be understood when the fabula and the Suzette are used. Okay. So in this sentence, starting here, this is when we start talking about The Godfather. But in no part of this sentence do we see that it's telling us that The Godfather can be a little complicated to understand unless the fabula and the Suzette are used. Absolutely not. It just tells us that in The Godfather, they are used. But it doesn't tell us that if they weren't used, it would be more difficult to understand the storytelling. Okay? So once again, we cannot assume it. It doesn't say it in that sentence specifically. It's just listing out that these two concepts are used in the film. Okay? And they help, talk about the story of the family and the two timelines. Okay? So C would not be the correct answer. And then D. D is honestly talking about chronological order, and it's easier to understand or more difficult to understand than if they were not chronological. Where does it say anything about chronological order? Okay, maybe you read these two, these two dates when it's presenting The Godfather, and you might believe something chronological. No, okay, although it does have a timeline, yes, it's not talking about, one thing leading to another and this is how it happened, in this exact order, okay? Nothing in this text is telling us that, we're just talking about two different concepts, okay? Nothing in here has to do with time or any type of order that would make something easier or harder to comprehend, okay? So D is just like one of those answers that you can automatically, whoop, cross out. Okay, so the correct answer choice is A. Do we have any questions? Either in person or on Zoom? Yes, no? No? Okay. If you have any questions, you can type it in the chat.
Yeah. The instructions, the instruction put clear off.
Okay. Number 7. Ooh. Okay, so let's just look at all this. Okay, I can't really present it all. Okay, we're just gonna look at this chart first. Actually, let's look at the passage and then we'll kind of dissect the chart. So the passage of time is among the many obstacles faced by scientists who are pursuing the extinction efforts. That is, efforts to use breeding or a mixture of cloning and genetic engineering to bring back extinct species. Specifically, researchers are concerned that the longer a species has been extinct, the less likely it is that a suitable habitat still exists for that species. Among candidate species for de-extinction, this problem would be especially concerning for the, okay, so. Okay, well, actually, I'm not gonna draw because I have to move this either way, but, this little short, 2-3 sentences is basically letting us know that Time is something that scientists struggle with in trying to bring back extinct species. So they're trying to use a mixture of cloning and genetic engineering to bring them back. But they're concerned that the longer species has been extinct, the less likely it is suitable that a habitat is still available for these species because, the longer they've been extinct, more time has passed, more changes have happened in habitats. Okay, it's basically the reasoning that's happening here. And they're asking us to complete the sentence, of this problem would be concerning for whom, or for what type of species, better said, okay? So we're gonna just look at this chart, to see what it's, what it's saying. So we have, it's called the partial list of candidate species for de-extinction. We have the name, scientific name, and the date in which they became extinct. Okay, so we have this Booyah, Caribbean monk seal, passenger pigeon, saber-tooth cat, and woolly mammoth, okay? Doesn't really matter about their scientific name, and then the dates they became extinct. So we see here, the most recent one was the monk seal, and then the latest one, or the earliest one, would be the tooth cat, okay? So, okay, I'm gonna just leave it here, because we do have to know what the chart says. Okay. We could do here, this is, I'm gonna do like the earliest one to be extinct. And this is the most earliest. Something like that. Okay, so again, remember that the question, I can't show it because I won't be able to show the chart, but the question is telling us that this, issue that scientists are struggling with would be hardest for what species, okay? So let's read and remember, what they're contesting is that the longer they've been extinct, the harder it will be for a suitable habitat for them to be, available. Okay, keep that in mind. A, the passenger pigeon, it doesn't matter, there's scientific name, you don't really have to waste your time reading that. Passenger pigeon, which became extinct only a few years after the huia. Huia? No idea. Okay, so correct, the passenger pigeon did become extinct, if we look at the two dates, just a few years after, actually 7 years after the huia, okay? That is correct, but is that what it's telling us? Why?
Because it's asking which animal will be harder to be extinct.
Yeah, so it's telling us, just like we said, it's telling us that the most, the earlier that they got extinct, the harder it is for them to have a suitable habitat now. Do we really think that, the passenger pigeon, which was extinct in 1914, would be that hard to find a suitable habitat for? No, because again, it was fairly recent. It wasn't as recent as the monk seal, but it is fairly recent. There are other species that were extinct way before the passenger pigeon. Okay, so A is not the correct answer. Okay, what about B? What about B? Do you think yes? Why B?
Because it was the longest out of all the animals there.
Absolutely, it's been extinct for 11,000 years before the present. None of these other candidate species have been extinct for that long. Okay, so we can say that B is most likely going to be the correct answer, but let's still go through C and D. Okay, the woolly mammoth, which became extinct several thousand years before the saber-tooth cat. Do we think that's correct? Anyone else? What's your name?
Alexander.
Alex?
Alex.
Alex, okay. Anyone other than Alex? Isabella, do you wanna give it a try? Do you just think that C makes sense? based off what you can see in the chart, is C a probable answer choice? You can say yes or no. No, right? Do you know why, or you just, it's a guess, kind of?
Well, because the woolly mammoth never went extinct before the saber-toothed cat, the saber-toothed cat went before the woolly mammoth.
Absolutely, okay, so. Regardless of the fact that this is not what the last sentence was asking us to complete, it's not the logical answer. You can tell that the information itself in this answer choice is incorrect. Okay, we can't pick an answer choice that's incorrect, okay? And either way, again, it's not telling us that it's telling us that the woolly mammoth is the one that scientists are more worried about because it would be the one that's been extinct longest. That's not true, okay? So regardless, the actual like logic in this answer choice is incorrect, therefore it is definitely not gonna be the correct answer choice. What about C? The Caribbean monk seal, which became extinct in 1952. No, why? The change? Right, we're looking for the oldest one, and that's literally the most recent one, okay? That wasn't even that long ago. So, absolutely not, this is the most recent one, as you can tell, okay? And so, the answer choice is B. This tooth cat was extinct before any other of these Canada species, and that's what, I'll go back to the. Okay, so. Obviously, the longer that it's been extinct, the less likely is that a suitable habitat exists. And this is a problem, especially concerning for the cat, because it has been extinct the longest out of these species. Okay? We all know why it was it B? Yes. Right? Yeah. Do you get that? Okay. So, the yellow.
Actually, going off script, my turn. This one's really easy, though, but then we'll break the last like two, which have been horrendous. Also, after a few questions, we're gonna, it might be after this one, maybe after like two more. We're gonna switch to the hard module for the last ones, like the grammar section. Just because the grammar section is already pretty easy as is. So, like, especially on this first section, so we wanna see if, you know, you guys feel comfortable with the second module for grammar. But anyways. So question 11, which quotation from the yellow wallpaper most effectively illustrates the claim? So in this case, the claim is over here, and it's the yellow wallpaper is an 1892 short story by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. In the story, the narrator expresses mixed feelings about her surroundings. So we're looking for something that shows, love and hate, like and dislike, something like mixed, right? She's unsure about how she feels because there are positives and there are negatives. So let's, I think this one's like pretty easy. So I'm actually just gonna ask for input and like see if you guys really need like crazy explanations. So can anyone tell me what they think the answer is? Either from the Zoom or in person, but if it's from the Zoom, it can't be Evander if he's on because he's already answered like a bajillion of my questions. Sorry, Evander. Or any of you guys in person. Yes, maybe so. No one. Okay, see, so yeah, like this is a pretty easy question, so I'm not gonna like go super in detail, but we're looking for something that has mixed feelings, so something that shows positives, negatives, that they don't know how they feel because they have contrasting points of view. So in this case, she says, oh, I'm quite fond meaning, you like something, you're appreciative of it, you're, you like it in some way, shape, or form. So she's quite fond of the big room, all but that horrid wallpaper, so. She likes, the room itself, but she doesn't like the wallpaper, so that's mixed feelings right there. If we look at the other options, they just kind of don't make sense with the claim that they're telling us, so. First, they're like this person's description, so it says, It's a pattern in different shade, an irritating one, you can only see in certain lights and not clearly. So this is like a bitter tone. She's saying like, I already hate it. I already hate the design. And then you can only see it in certain lights, and even then it sucks. So this one is just like pure hatred. So this one is like very monotone. She just doesn't like it, period. B is by moonlight, the moon shines in all night, where when there's a moon, I wouldn't know, da da da. This is more of like maybe mystical than anything. It doesn't really have like, she's not saying she likes it, she hates it, she doesn't know how to feel. If anything, the one tone I would say is like, she's mystified, she's intrigued, but there's nothing about like, there's not like a hate to counteract that, there's not like a dislike to counteract that. And then for this last one, it's again, really, really strong like hatred. So it says it's repellent, almost revolting, smoldering, unclean, strangely faded. So like all of this is just pure negative, right? So we have two clearly negative options. One that's a little like weird, but doesn't show contrast, and then C is kind of like the obvious answer here. I mean, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. I don't think this one's confusing at all, which is why I wanted to breeze through it to show you guys that like, after those past two that were like bombshells, there are like some easy ones scattered throughout. So Tony or Cameron, we're gonna skip to module 2, or you're gonna do, I'll do 12. Okay, so we're gonna do 12 and then we'll skip to module 2. So we're gonna cover this one, maybe 13 first. So what I'd like to do first, so obviously first, what we're faced with here is a table question. We'll get like 2, 3 of these on the actual test. So what I'd like to do first is just read what's going on here, so it's giving us the land area covered by native flowering plants. So it's basically maybe how much land, like how much plants have spread, maybe if you could visualize like that, right? And it's just how much area it covered, right? So the species 1, I'll call it, it covered 1230, then it covered 1576, and it increased by 28%. Species 2 initially covered this much, then it covered 10 more, but it increased by 55%, right? So it increased by almost half, right? I'll call that species 2. But now I'm gonna read this paragraph, because now what it will do in these types of questions, it'll put a claim down here, and with this info, I kind of have to make that claim, I have to kind of give supporting evidence, right? So the only flowering plant species native to Antarctica. So these are 2 species that are native to Antarctica, and they grow where the earth is free of ice, so where there's no ice, so they grow in the green part of Antarctica, right? So botanist Nicoleta Canone wondered how the warming of Antarctica's planet, so warming meaning how there being less ice, more grass for these species to grow, how that phenomena affected these species. So that's why she took this data of them spreading more, because she wants to see how the melting of ice, I guess, affects them, right? So she visited the site first in 2008 and 2009 and then 2018 to count the number of plants growing there. And then she just did, like, she also logged how much, by what percent increase, right? And now it's giving us the claim, right? So now we kind of have to focus in on this, what it wants us to answer, right? And it says that the researcher found that the area of land covered by the 2 species by they both expanded over this 9-year period, right? So in both cases, the area covered increases. We know that. Then it says both increased from warming, or both benefited from warming temperature. It's true, they both percent increased. And now it's asking Clovanthus quitensis, and now it wants us to fill in something that this species did. So now our answer choice here, what our answer choice is gonna be something that 2 did, right? So I want you guys kind of keep that in mind. So now I'm gonna read these answer choices and then ask you guys what you think. So which choice most effectively uses data to complete the comparison, right? So suppress the growth of the other one, which covered a smaller area of land, right? So that might be true.
Hi guys, so unfortunately our PC had another shutdown. So I'm sorry, we don't know why this is happening. This has never happened. today's just a really unlucky day. If you give us again like another 5 to 10 minutes, we'll get this up and running. But yeah, thank you. We'll just have a little 5-10 minute break, okay?
Guys, we will be starting very shortly.
Alright, guys, just to let you guys know, we are. Actively moving. 15 now. Hang in there. I don't know if you guys get a video here, but the screen share will be active. You should be able to see that screen share. Good. The camera doesn't work in this room, since we did have to change room guys. Sorry. Fine. Here it sits. Now, I tried to figure out the camera. Now, so. Here. So, same question. It was asking us about. Comparing these two species, right? What were the answers? So. It's asking us to kind of fill in this blank. To kind of answer about this second species, right? And we saw how 55% increase, just so facts about it here, it increased, both of them increased. So. The answers are that the second one surpassed the growth.
I'm sorry.
This can, but this, like, can you drag the zoom out to the back screen? Alright, then the second one says. Saw a greater expansion than the first one did. Alright. That the second one saw a greater expansion than the first species, increasing the area of land covered by more than half. That. The second species maybe showed a greater increase in the average size of individual plants. Want to kind of. Be paying attention to the units they use, average size of individual plants. Or covered land newly freed from ice at a rate 55% faster than the Chancellor Antarctica. Maybe related to time. Maybe what it's kind of asking us to do here is kind of see how it increased compared to the other one, and also maybe how the data is collected, maybe. So, does anyone want to share what they maybe think the answers and maybe why they think it is on Zoom or here? On Zoom, are you guys, do you have any answers, or do you guys want me to? So Daniel Francis said B. Do you guys agree with that, or do you guys? So we're getting some agreeing with B, so I'm gonna go ahead and read that again. Well, did we not bring them to the market? Little highlighter here for the energy. But that being said, that the second species Columbanthus saw a greater expansion because its percent area increased by more than 0.5%, right? So we see that the percent increase for that species was 55%, right? That is more than half. Right? And it saw a greater percent increase than the Chancellor because 55 is greater than 28. So in this case, the answer would be B. So the correct answer is B, as you can see here, because both of those are true, those are the two that you wanna look out for because you wanna analyze the graph, right? These last two. You can kind of see where they're trying to trick you, but it's not really exactly that. Because the average size of individual plants, it doesn't say anything about the size of the individual plants. It's describing its growth as a species, how much land it covers, right? D, nothing here is talking about how quickly it grew that. Or it covered land. That was free from ice, so that wouldn't really be a valid option either. So in this case, D would just have to be the answer. Okay. This is kind of another one that you can use process of elimination using the. What you know, what you recommend. Okay. This, do you guys want me to do 13 or just go to the harder modules and stuff, 30? Alright. So. Start with 14, right? Alright, so we're gonna start with the second module. Keep in mind, guys, it's the easier module. Just to make sure.
Well, yeah, so since we can't, there's a.
No, yeah, cause the camera here doesn't work.
Okay, so obviously the SAT is adapted, so, you know. According to how well you did in module 1, your module 2 will get, either harder or easier. So. Because we kind of just put whatever answers on module 1 just so we could see the questions. Your module 2 might not look the same as ours. Arguably, ours might be a little bit easier. Okay, yours should look harder. But just as a little heads up, we won't have the same questions for the most part, I believe. But the concepts are still relatively the same. So, just pay attention. If there are questions in module 2 that you're really stuck on and you want some help with, then again, I don't know if you guys are here, but Fabio most likely will have one-on-one office hours on Friday that you could attend and ask specific questions to him. Okay, so just, tune in. Okay, so. The Younger Dryas was a period of extreme cooling from 11,700 to 12,900 years ago in the northern hemisphere. Some scientists argue that a comet fragment hitting Earth brought about the cooling. Others disagree. Partly because there is no known crater from such an impact that dates the beginning of the period. In 2015, a team led by Kurt detected a 19-mile wide crater beneath a glacier in Greenland. The scientists who believe an impact caused the Younger Dryas claim that this discovery supports their view. Okay, however, Pagiers, no idea how to say that. This team. This team. This team, this team hasn't yet been able to determine the age of the crater. Okay, therefore, the team suggests that. Okay, what does this team suggest? Does anyone have an answer they could give me? Do you have an answer? A little bit. A. Okay. So A would be the plausible answer choice, okay? The plausible correct answer choice. But again, let's go A through D and just see. I'm gonna try to speed this up a little bit. So again, if you need like a more in-depth explanation, you can chat to us and we'll explain. But I'm gonna go a little bit quick just so we can get to the math section, okay? So A says that it can be concluded that the impacts that made the crater was connected to the beginning of the Younger Dryas. Why is this? Okay, so this is because there is no age of the crater. Okay, so because we don't have an age or a timeline of this crater, we can't date it back to the 11,700 or the 12, between 11,700 to 12,900, okay? Because there is no date, we cannot just assume that, because it was a crater, it automatically supports the younger Dryas kind of, assumption or the theory that these scientists have, okay? So absolutely, you can't just conclude that this impact was directly connected to the beginning of the younger Dryas because we do not have a timeline, we do not have dates, okay? So B, it can be determined whether a comet fragment could make a crater as large as 19 miles wide. Okay, this might look like possibly the correct answer because you might think, yeah, I mean, sure, maybe it can be determined whether a comet fragment could make a crater this big. Okay, it doesn't say that in the passage. Again, don't assume. Maybe you think that and you're like, you know what, that makes sense, and how can they determine that? They'll find a way. Okay? It doesn't say it in the paragraph, so it cannot be the correct answer, okay? The scientists don't talk about, a crater and like how much of an impact it can be to make a 19-mile wide crater, okay? A comet and its impact, okay? So you can assume. C, scientists have ignored the possibility that something other than a comet fragment could have made the crater, okay? So, okay, C, do we think C is correct? No. No, it's not, okay? So the science, again, some scientists argue that a comet fragment was what happened, was what brought about the cooling, but others say that there is no such crater, okay? So that is actually telling us that people have explored the possibility that there could be something other than a crater that could have caused this. Than a comet, I'm sorry. Keep switching to. There could have been something other than a comet that caused this crater. Okay, and D. The scientists who believe an impact caused the younger Dryas have made incorrect assumptions about when the period began. Absolutely not. The assumptions are correct. It says like this is when it happens, okay? That is not a misconception, okay? That is when it happens, okay? But just because they supposedly made an incorrect assumption would not be a suggestion made by the team as a result of them not being to determine the age. Okay? Okay, this could have been, but absolutely not. It has nothing to do with what they're asking us in these two sentences. Okay, in this sentence and a half. Okay, A, is the correct answer. Okay, because we have no time, we can't just connect it. Okay, it has to be a very clear and obvious relationship. There is no time, there is no relationship. Okay, A is the correct answer. I'm sorry if I went a little bit fast, but we're going to go to math. If you have, never mind. Never mind.
Okay.
We're not going to go to math. But if I did go a little bit fast, just chat it and I'll try to explain it through text.
We're gonna do like a little grammar check now since it's approaching 10:40 with all of the PC shutdowns and everything. We've gone through a little slowly, but just bear with us. We're gonna do some quick grammar ones and then we're going to go off to math because. So. These. Just. So, what makes a theremin a unique musical, or what makes a theremin a unique musical instrument? You play it without touching. When you place your hands between the two antennas, the pitch will shift as your hands move throughout the air. So, when you place your hands between the two antennas, is kind of the phrase it's listing, right? And we have to conform it to the convention of sound English, right? So, when you place your hands, right? First, your hands. When you place your hands between the two antennas, when we think of it, our hands. In that sentence, when we say hands, it's talking about the hands of the reader, right? It's not saying that the reader owns anything, that anything is of the reader, so. There's gonna be no apostrophe there because it's not indicating position at all. It's just talking about their hands living. So I can literally cross out all these three right now. And have just be there. But then, between the two antennas, it's gonna be the same thing, it's also not showing that the antenna owns anything. It's not really showing what needs to indicate a apostrophe, right? And what is really, there's nothing here mainly is just like your ability to identify when, like, you can't just put a random apostrophe because a lot of people will just put an apostrophe like when they need to put a plural to signify that. But this is kind of just testing, like, if you know not to do that, because if it's not indicating that the hands like how. Like, it's not describing something of your hands, it's not saying anything about the antennas, it's just saying two words that are not possessive at all, you don't put any apostrophe. You only put an apostrophe when it's indicating position. So for this case, we're just gonna choose one that has no apostrophes, and as you can see. That is A2. And this time, alright, so. Second question, this is a quick grammar review. While light is known as one of the most fast-moving substances, it slows down when passing through some types of matter. One such type of matter, so it's giving us an example of what slows down light, is a form of cooled condensed gas called a Bose-Einstein condensate. What? Now, I guess that was done. Dutch physicist Ling Hao famously used a BEC to slow beam of light to a complete line. So what we can take from this answer choices and context clues from here that it's used after, the BEC is going to be a kind of acronym that stands for Bose-Einstein condensate. And it's trying to make this stand up for that, right? So as you can see here, it's going to give kind of an acronym for that, right? But now that kind of sentence is done, and now it's introducing a new idea and saying that this physicist used that to slow beam of light, right? So now we kind of have to think, what punctuation mark signifies that I'm done with this idea and I can move on to the next, right? Comma, I could form a new idea with a comma, but I will have to use like a coordinating conjunction. So fanboys, we're not gonna get too deep into that. We just want to be able to do it. Comma signifies two little of a clause here, where like these are two completely two completely independent ideas or independent clauses, so I wouldn't use a comma to link those, right? Because a comma would be if maybe this is more connected, right? Just gonna be. Now, so I'm gonna take off the comma now, and maybe if it said comma and, but now it's saying and. I want to stress again that these are two completely independent ideas, and you have to use some form of punctuation to link them, not just a complete period. Because remember that this is the proper letter, right? Now, again, I'm gonna look at CD, they kind of look the same, but D has just a space, has no punctuation to separate those two. C has a semicolon, right? What we know about semicolons, they separate independent clauses that kind of acts as a period if you hadn't put like a capital letter. Dutch is already capitalized because it's a country, so here we would be able to use a semicolon because it's just acting as if it is making a break in the sentence and as if it was a period to separate those two items. So we just have to be able to identify the functions of each of those punctuation marks and identify that we can use it in this situation along with that. It's saying. Does anyone have any questions about this one? I know this one kind of seems more simple at first because it's just an acronym, but then it kind of, a lot of people might not know very well what a semicolon is, so you kind of want to be getting into that grammar, which we will be. Now, the French directors Paula Scula and Vivian Mermet-Guyenet, known as Scula and Viv, right? So French directors founded the video game studio Blue 12. So French directors founded a video game studio. They also love cats. So that's just two complete independent clauses about these French directors, right? Now, a transition word, right? Because it's kind of now moving on to transitions in the test. So some transition word either intermittently, on the other hand, in fact, nevertheless, they created an award-winning cat video game, String, that lets the player explore a dystopian city from the perspective of a clever French house family. So it tells you something about the developers. They founded a video game studio and they created an award-winning video game. So what transition word do we think we could maybe that would fit in best, right? So I'm gonna try to say them each and maybe we could see what matches best. So They also love cats. Intermittently, they created an award-winning cat video game. I'll let you guys kind of see maybe what connotation you think that brings. On the other hand, they created an award-winning cat video game. In fact, they created an award-winning cat video game, or nevertheless, they created an award-winning cat video game. So maybe do you guys have like maybe a definitive answer right now, or maybe something you think maybe we could scratch off? Or immediately like income, what do you guys?
Is it C?
Alright, so Megan thinks it's C, in fact. Megan, is there maybe like one or two that you thought like immediately off the bat that couldn't really be it?
Intermittently. And on the other hand, because on the other hand is like,
On the other hand, I think for sure, because that's like a direct negation, right? It's there are two closely related ideas, right? He found the video game studio and they created an award-winning cat video game, right? Same thing I would say with kind of D, nevertheless. Because it's still related, right? So Megan says, in fact, so let's shift that one. Right, so as you can see in this case, C is right. Good job, Megan. So because it's kind of just building off what they did, right? The French directors, they founded this video game. They love cats. Those two things came together. In fact, not only do they love cats and love the video game studio, but they made a video game about cats. It's expanding more on those two things together. So in this case, in fact, would fit in there. Intermittently, maybe kind of like saying, oh, well, they like both of those things, they did this, but in fact, kind of just shows that they're building upon those first two sentences more in that explanation I gave you, and it's just easier to see how it lines up. Does anyone have any more questions about these questions? I know I kind of sped through because we want to go fast with the grammar. Does anyone on Zoom or here? All right, that's perfect. So
I'm gonna go over the next ones.
Yeah.
You guys should recognize these. These were here for the first few that we did on reading. I just kind of want to show these to you because I want to show you guys a quick tip, which is that half the time you don't really even need to read like the notes themselves, because half the time what they're testing is about terminology here and your ability to use terms here to make connections with whatever they're asking you to do. So for example, in this case, I'm gonna show you, don't even look at the notes, okay? Because you're trying to save time on this test. At the end of the day, the test is timed, right? And that's what we care about. So it wants to present a study and its findings, okay? So if you're presenting a study, then you're saying, you know, in whatever year X and X person did X, Y, and Z, this was the study. Presenting its findings means, and they concluded, and they found, and the results were, okay? So that's our basic scheme. So we want to see something along the lines of, you know, they studied X and X, you know, scientists studied this, and this is what they got. So let's look at A. Given the debate about the Vinland map's age, researchers in 2021 conducted a study to analyze the elemental composition of the map's link. This has the study, right? It says, researchers in 2021 conducted a study to analyze blank. But this part right here, to analyze, this is talking about the aims of the study. So if they ask you, what did the study aim to find? Or what did the study want to find? What were they looking for? This would be your answer. But it doesn't tell us anything about the findings. It doesn't tell us whether they found that, you know, the map had X elemental composition, whether it had nothing because it was too old, X, Y, and Z, right? It doesn't give us the results. So that's why A is wrong. It only meets one of our criteria. Let's look at number 2, or legal, letter B. A 2021 study of the Vinland Maps Inc. revealed that it contained a titanium compound not used in inks until the 1920s, indicating that the map was drawn in the 20th century. So, this one. It tells us the study, so it introduces the study, a 2021 study of what? Of the Vinland Maps Inc. So this is the study itself, so it presents the study. And then, like, we're looking for results, right? That's the second part of our question. And over here it says revealed that, and then it says contains the titanium compounds, and then indicating this is the second part of the results. So what did we get from these results? Indicated that the map was drawn in the 20th century. So this already looks like our answer, right? Because it fits both categories. And we haven't even looked at the notes. Okay, let's take a see. The Vinland map, believed by some to have been drawn in the 15th century, was the focus of a 2021 study. Again, if they ask us about the aim of the study, if they ask us about what was the study trying to find, what was the study trying to focus on, then maybe this would be our answer, because it says the Vinland map was the focus of it. But that's not what the question is asking. The relationship that we're looking for is the study itself, so a basic overview, and then the results. So C is wrong. And then D, whether a certain titanium compound was not used in ink since the 1920s, researchers in 2021 studied the elemental composition of the Vinland math ink. This is like the first one, but it doesn't even have the aim of study. It just says they studied the elemental composition of the Vinland math ink. Does it tell us anything about results, anything about data, anything about what it revealed, any conclusions? It tells us nothing. So that's why D isn't the answer either. And I want to show you guys this just to kind of like get you guys used to solving these in like a really fast like pace, right? Because if you can like breeze through these notes questions, because this is what these are 3 questions at the end. If you can breeze through these like 2 or 3 questions at the end, those are already 2 to 3 points that you're getting super duper fast, right? And that's kind of our aim with the SAT, not just to get things right, but to get them done at a pace that allows you to like focus on the questions that are harder for you, right? So let's look at this. Okay. The student wants to emphasize the difference between the 2 approaches to dyeing blue jeans. Which choice most effectively uses relevant information from the notes to accomplish this goal? Okay. Alright. So first things first, again, I'm not even gonna look at the notes. And the reason I'm not even looking at the notes is because I want to get you guys used to like focusing on the scheme of this question and how fast you can solve this. So we want to emphasize the difference, okay? So if possible, we're going to try and look for contradictory terms. So though, however, unlike, dissimilarly, all the but, you know, all these kinds of terms that maybe give us hints. But we're not gonna, but just like we did in the last one, we're gonna look at every answer choice because some can be similar, okay? So we're looking for a difference between the 2 approaches. So okay, let's look at A. Though created using a different process, Gray's dye contains the same ingredient as dye produced by blue jean manufacturers. Okay. We're going to put it in the maybe because if I was looking at this at first glance, I would see though. And I would be like, okay, maybe that's an option. So I'll put in maybe. B. Nanocellulose is a natural plant-based substance that separates the molecules of indigo powder, which doesn't dissolve in water. This, right off the bat, if I ask you what this is, you'd probably say like a detail, a fact, right? This isn't anything about like comparison, right? This isn't them saying that this nanocellulose is better, is worse, is more efficient, dyes things faster, right? We don't have a comparison at all. So B is right off the bat wrong because it doesn't even remotely fit this relationship. There aren't terms that give it away. There's no kind of, you know, though, however, on the contrary, so right off the bat B is wrong. Let's check C. The traditional approach to dyeing blue jeans is to dip them in a solution containing hazardous chemicals. Once again, this is more of a fact. This is like a detail, right? It's the same as B, right? So if B isn't an answer, then B isn't an answer either. Because this, if you look over here, which again, I don't suggest you do if you're like crunched on time. But if you look over here, you're probably gonna find it in here somewhere. So see, look, B is this over here. And then C is probably going to be, you know, like maybe like the first one, right? I can't see the entire answers and I want to show you guys this, but it might be like, you know, the first bullet or the second bullet, right? But this isn't like a comparison. This isn't showing that relationship. And then if we look at D, Rye's approach substitutes a natural plant-based substance for the hazardous chemicals that manufacturers have traditionally used. Okay. So I'm gonna put this in a maybe. Why am I gonna put this in a maybe? Because even though we don't see on the contrary, all these like keywords, right? What is it showing? It's showing the difference. Because it's saying this approach substitutes this for this, which manufacturers have traditionally used, right? So it's saying, how is it different? Well, instead of using these hazardous chemicals, it uses a natural plant-based substance, right? So let's revisit A, because we've already looked at D. And we know that these 2 are already wrong, so we already have a 50-50 chance of getting it right. If you look at A is wrong. And the reason that A is wrong is because we're trying to emphasize the difference. If you look at A, and I tell you right now, though I disagree with Natalie that this board is, you know, forest green, we agree that that chair is blue, right? I'm emphasizing the similarity. I'm saying, oh, though that we both agree X, Y, and Z, right? So we're not emphasizing the difference. We're emphasizing the similarity, right? So we're emphasizing this second part. The Rye's dye contains the same ingredient, right? That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to emphasize the difference, not the similarity. So even though this first part is right, this second part kind of negates it. So A is wrong. So D is our answer. Do we see why D is the answer? All right. I'm trying to like breeze through these because I wanna get you guys onto the math section, but I want you guys to just see that these notes. You literally don't even need to look to the left side half the time. I'm not gonna say all the time, there might be times where you have to look for certain relationships and stuff like that, but for the most part, you can kind of like go through these really fast. So let's see this one. The student wants to emphasize the aim of the research study, which choice most effectively uses relevant information from the notes to accomplish this goal. Okay, so they want to emphasize the aim of the research study, so let's keep that in mind. So we're looking for, the study wanted to prove this, the study was looking to show that, the study was trying to resolve X issue, okay, those are the kind of like structures that we're looking for. So if we look at A, analyzing ocean temperature data, Torres found that during the marine heat wave, blue whales foraged farther offshore than they had during cooler periods. How do we feel about A? Do we like A? Do we dislike A? Anyone? On Zoom, in person? No, yes, yes, no. Yes. Okay, we're gonna leave the thinking for the math section because I want to get you guys over there. So, right off the bat, if you have to classify these, right? It tells us found that and then it gives us a fact from here to here. So this is results, right? This is like what that study actually found. And what they're asking us for is the aim. So what did the study aim to find? Not what they found, what they were, like what they had in the past, what they were, trying to get out of it. So A is wrong because even though it tells us what they got, it doesn't tell us what they wanted to search for. So if we check B, it says in her study, Torres sought to determine, so this is already looking good, how ocean temperature affects where blue whales forage for krill in the South Taranaki Bight region. So this right off the bat already seems like our answer because it says it sought to determine. So this is an aim, this is a goal, right? So let's look at C. Torres' study revealed. Right off the bat, this is wrong. And the reason this is wrong is because just like this one, which is found that, it's telling us about results. If they say revealed, concluded, found, all these things are talking about results, things that they found at the end of a study, not what they sought to get at the beginning. So C is wrong like A. And if we look at D, Torres, a marine ecologist, studied blue whales in the South Taranaki Bight region where whales forage. This is a fact. This is, she studied it. It doesn't say what she wanted to get out of the study. It doesn't say she wanted to find out about their food habits, about their foraging, about their It tells us that this is where the whales forage, but it doesn't tell us that that's what she was studying, which is why D is wrong. It tells us about the aim of the study, and the only one that talks about the aim is B. If you have any questions, I suggest maybe put it in the chat or ask us after because we're gonna move on to that.
Alright, I'm gonna do one quick question. And then. We're going. So we are officially beginning with the first module of the math. I think if you did the practice sets, you should have done these questions. Yeah, so this first question. Kind of touches on a subject that we will definitely be going more in depth on. But that is dimensional analysis, right? So. A bird can fly at a speed of 16 meters per second. So the speed is 16 meters per second, right? When in continuous flight, right? So that speed is continuous. A bird 16 meters. Forever, right? Continuous. And then, so it's asking at this rate, in 4 seconds, how many meters does the bird fly? Right? So if every second it's going 16 meters, if we do how many meters it's doing in 4 seconds, then we have to multiply that speed times 4, right? That's kind of a way to think about it, but then I'll kind of show you with the units, right? So if we're seeing 16, and then I'm gonna look at the units, meters per second, meters is division, so meters over second, right? Now I see 4 seconds. How many meters will it be in 4 seconds? If I do this, I'll end up with meters divided by second times second. Divided by second times second, this cancels out, right? So what we're left with is just meters. So 16 times 4, and then the unit finally is meters, right? And the question is asking us how many meters would it have? If we cancel out the units, we get 64 meters. Because 16 times 4 meters. So when you're trying to find the speed and it gives you how much time that you would be flying at that speed, you multiply the two and it gives you the meters, and we could furthermore see that with how these units cancel out. That's definitely more, we'll get into that with dimensional analysis. But for now, you can see kind of how if we come this backwards, what speed would the bird have if it was 64 meters per 4 seconds? It will be 60 meters per second. So kind of just to get you thinking. Sorry. So now we'll have a linear equation, like kind of more linear modeling that we've done in other sessions with Flavia. Been there for that. Here. This one is definitely more the example of ones that you should do with decimals. But it's kind of an example of how you should be using decimals and kind of basic arithmetic. No, decimals is all of those. So if anytime you guys ever need to be getting to decimals for the SAT, you could search here. Search of decimals, SAT or decimals, AP, and it should show up here. Obviously, maybe not in your browser, but if you search up decimals and you see digital PSAT, SAT version, that should be the one.
Alright, so just.
No, we have to, I think screen share. So sorry, guys. Quickly, we're going to be adding the screen share to that thing. Alright. Bear with this computer, guys, I'm sorry. Alright, screen one, and we should be good. And let's sort that notation thing. Perfect.
So 2 says that line R in the xy plane has a slope of 4 and passes 2.06. And it's asking us to find the equation that defines line R. Okay? So let's do this kind of like a decimals way instead of like manually. Okay? So what you do when you're asked some sort of question like this, basically, we can see that. I'll try to do it visually. Let's say this is. Sorry. Right, forget about that. This is 0.6. Okay? That little point is 0.6. Okay? If it's telling us that the slope is 4, when we move on 1x, it'll be 1 here.
Right, slope is how much change per 1 unit of the defined variable, right? So when you add, or when you get an additional x unit, the y value will increase by the slope. That's kind of intuitive way to think about the slope when you're thinking more of linear relationships and stuff.
Right, so then the next point would be 110.
Right.
That's
We
just,
just created that point.
right, so that's just a way to think of it, like, on a graph. So now what we're gonna.
But just a little lesson for you guys, if you type in. Because what we're trying to do here is add a table to plot the points. If you just type in the words table, a table should appear. on the SAT. So. Technical difficulties again. Right, so you just write in the table, as you can see there, and then a little convenient table shows.
Right, so we're gonna plug in the first point, the one that it gives us, that liner passes through, which is 0. X coordinate 0, Y coordinate 6. And then the one that we found, which is 110. If anything, what you can always do is put the Y coordinate that's given to you and just add the slope to that. Okay, so it's 10, but just, save you some time, or if you're not really sure what the next point might be. Okay, so then it gives us those 2 points, and then
Oh, it's, this is covering it. This is, oh, okay, sure.
then this.
Right, so this little button is super important to be able to see that regression, right?
So then, once you click that top little button, you can't see it anymore, but it was like towards it where the 1 is, okay? It'll give you the linear regression, okay? So the equation, with using these 2 points is y equals 4x plus 6.
So,
Okay, so that is
like,
D.
you might not have seen this lot, but this is basically a really important feature because as you can see, we literally just made up that point. And basically from nothing, Desmos literally just tells us the exact answer. Like from what we're doing, if you just remember to add the y value plus slope, you can literally get the equation right there, and this question is something that you could knock out super easily. It's like just one of the easiest ways to save time on the SAT when you know that you could be trying for the harder questions, So definitely something we will be going over more too, because Desmos has a lot of capabilities with regression, so. Yeah. Now it's just a little question on equivalent expressions, which is definitely a significant topic here on the SAT.
Okay, so it's telling us which expression is equivalent to 5x to the power of 5 minus 6x to the power of 4 plus 8x to the power of 3. What do you think would be our first step in solving this question? Do we know? No? Right, so we're gonna start factoring out the x, okay? So. All right. Okay, so this is the equation that they give us. Okay, so now we're gonna start factoring things out. What can we factor out? What? X, okay. How many x's can we factor out? So, what it would look like. We're gonna factor out x3. Okay.
This is one of the places where exponent rules or just knowing exponent rules can come in handy. When you're trying to remember what goes into that final parentheses, like when you finally factor it out, just that.
Right, okay. So. After, remember, we need a little bit of memory, that's 1, okay? So, okay, absolutely. We can't only factor the x3 because that is the lowest x, factor that we have, okay? We can't do x5 because this is only 3, okay? So let's factor out x3, we're left with, 5x2, and then negative 6x, there's always an invisible 1, okay? So that's not like 0 or something like that. It's like an invisible 1. I wrote it down there, but usually you're not gonna see that, okay? If it's just like a standalone x, there's a 1, okay? And then obviously since we took out the x3 from that 8, then the 8 is left unknown, okay? So. Yes. Any questions? No? Maybe? Perfect, moving on.
So. I wanna kind of do this one because. I feel like there are a lot of like really like long word problems that are like super duper easy. And there's just like a lot of blur for no reason. So for this one, it just says Scott selected 20 employees at random from all 400 at a company. He found that 16 in the sample, so this is important in this sample, meaning of this 20, are enrolled in exactly 3 professional development courses this year. Based on Scott's findings, which the following is the best estimate. So we're probably gonna be using something like proportions or some kind of way to figure out something about the 400, okay? Of the number of employees of the company who are enrolled in exactly 3 professional development courses. Okay. So we're trying to look for the same thing here and here, meaning this, so we're gonna go proportion, because it means that this 16, so the 16 that he sampled here, the 16 out of the 20 that he sampled that are enrolled in exactly 3, we want to see what that translates to when we have all of them, so when we have all 400. So also I would be over there, but like the table's blocking it, so I have to be over here, but I'm gonna like try to. So we're trying to see what number this equals to out of 400. Also, like part of my handwriting, this thing is like sucky. But we're trying to find this x, right? We want to have the same proportion. I don't know if you guys remember this from like Algebra 1, but whenever you have a proportion and you cross multiply, you should get the same answer. So what that means is that 400 times 16 just give us the same thing as 20x. So all you have to do is divide 400 times 16 by 20. And you can do this like on the you have a calculator, you have Desmos, or you can bring your own calculator. So when you divide 400 times 16 by 20, you get 16. This one's kind of just knowing how to build a proportion. So if they give you like a ratio, so they say, 3 out of 5 of the students like cookies, and they say how many of the entire school of 1,000 students like cookies, you have to make that 3 over 5 equal to a proportion out of however many the total is, which in the case here was 400, and they have to just solve for x. So, this one's pretty fast when you have a calculator or like some kind of tool, which luckily on the SAT you do. For anyone that didn't see, this is kind of the work. If you have any questions, I can go over it like later, or if you have anything in the chat, like make sure you put it. But I'm not gonna spend too much time on that because I feel like that one was pretty easy. I also wanted to go over 8 really fast. Because I feel like this one kind of gets people confused, but it's really not too hard of a question if you know what to look for. So it says the function can be estimated there were 2,000 animals in a population in 1998. Each year from 1998 to 2010, the function estimates that the number of animals in this population increased by 3% of the number of animals in the population the previous year. Okay, when you're seeing an increase by 1% and by 1% of the previous year, that means that you're looking for an exponential function, which means nothing like a parabola, nothing like that. We're looking for something that's in this form. So a b to the x. That's the form that we're looking for. There might be like other, stuff added to it at the end or whatever, but this is our basic form. We're looking for something that looks like this. So in this case, we can't eliminate anything just from that. So in some cases, you might see like a parabola, like an ax squared plus bx plus c, whatever, and you can immediately eliminate that because we're going for a percent increase, and percent increases are always going to be in exponential form. Okay. So let's continue. So it's an increase. So I'm going to go over that in a little bit. Which equation defines the function? Okay. So basically, we're looking for an increase by 3%. What does this mean? That means that when we plug in 1 over here, we should get the initial value. But if we plug in anything after that, it should be that initial value plus whatever 3% of that value is, right? So you might be tempted to think, okay, so what we're putting here is 0.03 or 3 because it's 3%. So first things first, when you have a percent, you have to convert that to a decimal. We're working with it in math. So we want to go for, instead of 3, 0.03. Okay. We don't see anything here of 0.03, but we do see 0.03 subtracted from 1, 0.03 added to 1, and subtracted from 2, 0.03 subtracted from 1, and then we see 3 here. So this 3 is automatically wrong because this is talking about like a percent, which is translates to decimal. Then, if we actually look at these answers, it's asking for an increase. It's asking for the numbers going up by 3%. If we're doing this, if we have 0.97, meaning we subtracted 3, then what that means is that if you plug in 1, or you plug in 2, or you plug in 3, the number's gonna go down. And it's gonna go down because we're only getting 97% of the original number, right? So if you put, again, like 1, 2, 3, 4, the number's gonna go down. But we're getting an increase of 3%. So we know that this one's wrong, just by the sheer fact that it decreases. And then if we look at B and C, like C is that original number because it's that 1 plus that 0.03 of the percent that we got earlier. So C is our answer. B is not our answer because it's subtracting 0.03 from 2. So if it said it doubles, and then 3% gets subtracted from that, which they'll never give it to me that complicated. But if that was your question, then it would be B. But because we're just looking for that original number plus 3%, our answer is C. Again, if you have any questions, put it in the chat or ask about it later. But I wanted to breeze through those, just so we can get to some other types of questions.
Just some more basic math. Alright, so we're gonna do this again. We're gonna go through this one faster, so we can all go. So. Here it's kind of just a general model, so it's kind of showing us how to explore with mathematical model. So an egg is thrown from a rooftop, that's very just easy image. The egg thrown from a rooftop, have a particular parabola shape. The equation h equals negative 4.9 t squared, 19 plus 18, right? It's giving us a graph, and it's saying that represents a situation where h is the height and t is time, right? So it's giving us a graph that represents the height of the egg after it's being thrown as a function of the time after which it was being thrown. So obviously forming like a parabola, right? And now it's asking, according to the equation, what is the height from which the egg was thrown, right? If you kind of picture it, if the y value is the height, you're gonna try to draw like a little graph here as it goes on Desmos. From where it was thrown, if t is the time, when t equals 0 is when it's thrown. Right, and if this is a graph or something, so the little parabola, that y-intercept is going to be where t equals 0, where it was thrown from. So what we're looking for is the y-intercept of this given equation. So what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna go with decimals and I'm going to graph this, right? But then remember, we have to be putting in x's, so 4.9 x squared plus 9x for 9x plus 18, right? So here, very easily, we will just check here, where it's thrown from the y-axis is 0.18. So the height is the y value. It's asking us what height was it thrown from. The height that it was thrown from is 18 when the time after throwing was 0, because this was immediately when it's thrown. Now we're gonna move on to 11. Now this one is just obviously kind of more equivalent expressions type things. So it gives us kind of this just equation. 4 times the square root of 2x equals 16. Now it wants us to solve for 6x. I could take this two types of ways. I could put this into decimal, solve for x, and multiply that number that decimal gives me by 6. Or I can manipulate this expression to try to give me 6x, right? So that's what I'm gonna do here. So divide by 4, try to isolate the x, or that's 6x, right? So square root of 2x equals 4. I do to the 2 of both sides. So 2x equals 16. If I want to get 6x, I multiply by 3 times 3 times 3. 6x equals 48. So 6x is 48, right? So this is our answer, right? But obviously, I want to show you guys multiple ways in which you can answer questions, so I just want to highlight the fact that this one is kind of more of it's a question that you can more choose how to do it, either way will be kind of the same. Oh. So if I were to put just here. 4. And reminder, just like the table thing, there are little keywords you can put in decimals. That could be thing. Wow. Sorry, guys. Stop the keyboard. 4 times, and I'm gonna put square root of 2x, so I'm gonna put SQRT. RT, that's gonna be the square root. I put 2x. Then that equals 16. Right, and obviously that will give me the value of x. And now, check here. It's not going to be hard to see, but it's 8. So I'm gonna do 6 times 8, that's going to be 48. So both ways we found out the answer would be 48. So, and then this last one is kind of just like the first question or the second question we did with the tables. So it's going to be kind of more, once again, trying to find those points out and identify. So the relationship between two variables is linear, and then it tells us the slope literally. Every time we increase in value x by 1, so every time you increase the x, your y value increases by 8. So the slope is 8. Right? Then it gives us a point. When the value of x is 2, the value of y is 18. So I'm going to take that exact same strategy that we have been doing for the table. And we're going to put in 218. Now, the same thing, we know the slope, right? So I'm going to add the x, right? Even if I didn't know the slope, every increase in the value of x by 1, I'm going to increase the value of x by 1. The value of y increases by 8, so I'm going to increase the y by 8. Now, how that is as the relationship is linear, I can click this and find linear regression. I can literally just see what's going to be. Oh. There's a click one, goes 3, and that's going to be so 218, that's 18 plus the slope, so 18 plus 8. Yeah. So remember the y value initially plus slope, right? So that's 2 plus 1, 18 plus 8. Then we see that that linear relationship is going to be y equals 8x plus 2, which is the answer here for C. So that shows kind of how just the linear regression on decimals, we can kind of just clear out a lot of easy questions you did for that. But now we have some more probability questions, you know. So we're going to be doing more data analysis now. Remember, oh wait, one now. But this one's so this math for this equation, x squared equals negative 841. How many real solutions does it have, right? So in Algebra 2, we learned that or not, but in Algebra 2, you learn that equations can have complex and real roots, right? So here, to solve this one, we would have square root, right? But then that would involve taking the square root of negative 841. That's the only way we would be able to solve this equation, right? There, we would end up with the square root of a negative number, where if you've done more of that, you would know that that's gonna be a complex number, which is imaginary, right? The question is distinct from a solution, so just by knowing that you can't take the square root of a negative number and it be real, you can just say here, the answer is going to be 0. It has no real solution, because we're taking the square root of a negative number. Once again, we can visualize this here by seeing if we put x squared equals negative 841. And we zoom out, a solution is when it hits the x, right? But what? Oh, because this isn't actually a y, right? It's searching for a solution, but this is the real thing, right? If I were to do x squared plus 841 equals 0. Sorry, Jared. It's y. You can see here. So as you can see here, it's a line or a parabola above the x-axis. It never hits the x-axis, it has no solutions. So it has no resolution. You can just see if it does what's there. If you visualize it, it has complex solutions, but here you see it has no resolution. So now I'll hand it on to Timothy where we're going to be doing more kind of probability. So, there you go.
Okay. So it's telling us that the two box plots show the distribution of the number of books read over the summer by the students in two different English classes. What is the positive difference between the ranges of number? Between the ranges of number of books read over the summer for the two classes. So they're asking us for the positive difference between the ranges. Okay. Do any of you know how to find range? Median, no. Evander?
Take the largest value and subtract the smallest value from it.
Absolutely, that is how you find range. So in a box plot specifically, the largest value is always going to be, the end point of the actual plot, okay? And then obviously the smallest is like the start point, okay? So it's telling us that for class A and class B, the largest point for class A is 5. And the smallest one is 0. So we have to subtract the largest point by the smallest one, okay? So obviously we can tell right here that the range for class A is 5. And then for B, we see that the largest point is 10 and that the smallest is 1. Okay, 10 minus 1, 9. Okay, so we found the range for class A and class B, but that's not what they're asking us, okay? Let's try. That's not what they're asking us. To ask me a question.
No, it's that's
Okay.
or just keep going.
Okay, that's not what they're asking us. So if you just, this is not a multiple choice question, this is like an actual input question. If you put either 5 or 9, you're gonna get it wrong, so that's not what they're asking, right? You did find the range, but they're asking you to find the positive difference between the ranges. How do we find the positive difference between the ranges? We subtract 9 minus 5. Okay, it's 4, okay? Positive difference, okay? If you were to do 5 minus 9, it's not positive. Okay, so this is just not what they're asking. Okay, don't get confused. Don't, just stop because you got the range. No, they're asking you to go beyond the range and get the difference, the positive difference, the positive number. So it is 4. Okay. Any questions? If you have questions, you can leave it in the chat. And we'll get back to you. Zoom. So, yeah. Okay, so number 16 tells us the scatter plot shows the relationship between two variables x and y. An equation for the exponential model can be shown written as xy plus a times b raised to the power of x, where a and b are positive constants. Which of the following is closest to the value of b? Okay, so they give us this plot here. Okay, what we need to do here, we're trying to find the, in general, we're trying to find this exponential equation because we want to find the value closest to b. Right here that we want to find b. Okay, and at the end of the day, we have to find the whole equation. Okay, so what we do here is we're just gonna kind of similar to what we do in like the linear relationships. We're gonna find 2 points. Okay, but do not get confused. You can't just get any of the. Okay, you see these like random points? I'll circle them. These are not accurate points. You have, excuse me, you have to find points that actually hit on the graph. So that would be 1020 is a point, and 550, 460, okay, and 460. Okay, so don't get confused. Okay, these points in yellow, do not use these points, okay? Don't use these points. You have to use points that, you know, the exponential graph shows on the actual plot.
You're looking on the model, not the data.
Right, so we said 1020 and we said 560. What we're gonna do again, we're gonna go, so like Anthony showed you guys, you just can type in table and it'll give you a table, or you can press this plus button and select table. Okay, so we're gonna put in the 2 points we have, which is, I'll show you. We have 10, 20, and we have 460. No, 460. Okay, then we're gonna click this little, you know, like drawing right next to the one. And don't get confused, this is not a linear regression. We're looking at an exponential model, okay? Linear regression is for lines. This is not a line, okay? It's not linear. So we have to go click on this thing. You have a bunch of different options to choose from. As we know, this is an exponential regression, okay? And then right then and there, it gives you the equation for this. Oh. Perfect. Let's regard the little drawings. Okay, so if it's asking us for the value of b, which answer choice closely shows what the value of b is? Considering that, you know, the equation is, this. What is the answer? You can chat it, or Evan, or if you wanna unmute.
I had an alternate way to get to the solution.
You what?
I did it in a different way.
Okay, will you just tell me what you got as an answer choice? I mean, there's,
A.
right, it is A, and there are many different ways to do this, question, but I just wanna stress, kind of the more Desmos way, because I want you guys to all see that, you know, Desmos can help you greatly, okay? You didn't have, of course, you could have done this manually, or you could have done it any other way, but I'm just trying to stress the Desmos way, but absolutely, we got the same answer choice, so your method was correct. It is A. Now, this is a geometry question. Okay. So it's telling us, it's asking, in the triangle shown, what is the value of cosine? Okay, so hopefully we all, remember, what does cosine mean? What is the term? Is it hypotenuse over opposite? Is it adjacent over opposite? What is it? Do we know? Absolutely. So cosine is that's hopefully that's not true. Yes, it's really true. Yeah, it's happening. Okay. So. What is the value of cosine? So what is the value that is right next to the x? 11, okay? And then over the hypotenuse, what is the hypotenuse? 28. Speak up, you're right. Okay? That is it. That is the answer, okay? You just have to remember the differences between cosine, sine, tangent, okay? If it was asking for sine, it would be the opposite value, so then you would be asked to you wouldn't be asked, but you would have to find this opposite value here, okay? But no, it's asking us for the adjacent, which is just 28. You could input that as your answer choice, you can convert it into a decimal and it would still be correct. Okay, there's many different forms, but always read the question because maybe at first glance you would want to do the Pythagorean theorem because you're gonna think, oh, surely they're gonna ask me to find the missing value. It's not what they're asking you. Okay, you didn't have to do any of that. You just have to look there, that's your answer. Okay. So that was that. I don't.
Alright, so now we're gonna do some questions in the first section of the second module of the map. So the first, just an easy one, honestly. Don't be too much into it. Just wanna get through these ones as much as we can. So two lines intersect at a point. Right, when two lines intersect, we know that obviously they make 4 vertical angles. Right, there's different ones that are equal, right? The opposite angles are called the vertical angles that are equal to each other. So 1 and 2 are equal to each other. Because that's just what happens when two lines intersect. Angles 1 and 2 are vertical angles, you can tell. The measure of angle 1 is 72. What is the measure of angle 2? Simple. When there's two lines that intersect, they make vertical angles. Vertical angles are always equal to each other. So 1 and 2 are equal to each other. If angle 1 is 72 degrees, angle 2 is 72. So the answer here, what is the measure of angle 2? That will be 72 degrees. As you can see here, the answer is A, right? Just wanted to get an easy one to show you guys. Because that kind of foundational knowledge could be useful in future geometry questions if you were thinking. Now, another one, this one, we can just simplify, we can put it into decimals. Honestly, at this point, doing it by hand for me will be easier. P plus 3 plus 8 equals 10. P plus 11 equals 10. Minus 11 minus 11. P equals -1. Inside. Obviously, I could have put in decimal, substitute P for X, but sometimes you just in this case, it will be easier not to put decimals for you guys because I want to do it quicker. Of course, decimals always the easier route. So another easy one. What is the y coordinate of the y-intercept of the graph shown, right? So the y-intercept is where a graph hits the y-axis. So here the y-intercept is this point in bold, right? If we look at the coordinate of that point, the x is 0, the y is 3, so that's 0.3. The y coordinate is just going to be simple, it's 3. Well, you can see here the correct answer is 3. These are just new ones, okay? This one, k squared equals 53 minus 53 equals 91. It's asking for a positive solution. Here, I'm not really feeling like doing that now. I know what I can do, so what I'm going to do with this one, I will put in decimals. Remember, always have to substitute for x, so x squared minus 53. And I think I got a question about this, right? Equals 91. And here, when I just put this is just an equation, right? This isn't a quadratic function, I'm inputting nothing, right? This is just a pure equation. So I'm getting two solutions as x-intercepts that are 12 and negative 12, right? But of course, most equations like this can be solved as a quadratic function too. If we added 91 on both sides and make the right side y equals, obviously we will be able to see that that's actually a parabola that we could form to check the solutions, but yeah. So, which is my requirements. Thank you. This one. So, then again. This last one, x equals 8, the solution to the given system of equations is x comma y, where it's 5. So we have two different options. We can either plug in x here and just solve for y, or we could plot both of those points on decimal, which is what I'm gonna do to show you guys just what's easier, right? So x equals 8. X equals 3y. So what we are looking to do here is just zoom in on that, right? Zoom in. So what I want to be doing to find the solution of a system of equations is checking the intersection of the two lines, right? So that's the point how which they intersect. So what is going to be the number that answers that question? So what do you think is going to be the answer to that? Or the number that is going to be right to that question? Does anybody know the y value? Or 6? All right. So indeed 6 will be the y value. So this one, they give it to you a bit more easier. Sometimes they will put like, what is the value of like 6y or something? So they'll try to like trick you up, but for this one, just pretty general one. Did you want to start? Yeah, go. Okay. We'll go ahead more, do more now. So. I wanted to do a very simple geometry one because I want to show you guys just like that terminology kind of get you like a really long way. So if you look at this one, like this is a pretty easy point on the SAT. So it says the perimeter of an isosceles triangle is 36 feet. So perimeter just means like the sum of the sides added together, and then isosceles means that two sides are equal. So just like some terminology that you should know, if you have a triangle, they say equilateral, equal, think like equal sides. So that means that all these sides are equal, and if they say isosceles, it means two of them are equal. So we have some kind of triangle like this. Pretend that my drawing is good because I am not an APR student for a reason. So these two are equal, and the perimeter of the entire thing is 36 feet. Each of the two congruent sides, this is another geometry term, congruent means equal, or like the same time. Okay. So each of the two congruent sides has a length of 10 feet. So that means this is 10, and this is 10, and this we don't know. What is the length in feet of the third side? So this is a really easy question because if you know what each of the terms mean, then all you can do is a very simple equation. All you have to do is subtract. So you can do 36 minus 10 from one side minus 10 from the other. It's gonna give you this x, this side that we don't know. And so all we have to do is 36 minus 20, and that gives us 60. I just want to show you guys that it's pretty easy for some of them to just kind of, get it done and get it done fast. Especially for geometry. I wanted to go over also question 15. Also, the reason that I'm not like asking like for input a lot for this math section is because
I want to speed it up for you guys, and since this is the practice test that you guys should have or could have done at home, I'm not gonna like go over every answer choice all the time. For some that I think are important, like this one, I will go over some answer choices, but it'll be clear why I'm doing it for certain questions, and I'll always know it open. Okay, so for this one, at a movie theater, it wants to cooperate with me. There we go. I don't think there are a total of 350 customers. Each customer is located in either theater A, theater B, or theater C. If one of these customers is selected at random, the probability of selecting a customer who is located in theater A is 0.48. So when you see probability and you see a decimal, you can translate that to percent just by moving it 2 decimal places like forward. So in this case, if you move the little decimal point 2 places back, we get that it's 48%. In this case, it's 24%. So the probability of selecting a customer who is located in theater B is 0.24. So again, this is 48 for theater A, and this is 24 for theater B. So remember that like when you're working with percents, right, the maximum is always 100, right? So if you say I'm 100% sure, that means that you're entirely sure. So to find the probability of that the customers are going to be located in theater C, we're going to do 100. Or you can do 1 if you're going in probability mode. So you can do either 100 minus 48 minus 24, or you can do 1 minus 0.48 minus 0.24. And this, and the reason that I'm putting this out, is going to give you either 28 or 0.28. Why am I showing this to you? Because this is a multi-step problem, and the SAT likes to put answers for the steps as answer choices. So you see it right here in A. So if you're really quick and you're on a time crunch and you're not thinking about what they're asking you for, you're going to see 28, you're going to see that you got 28, and you're going to put 28, and you're going to get it wrong. Because it's not the actual final step. This is a percent. So if you leave it in probability, this is just 0.28%. This is just 0.28 in probability. So we're not actually taking into account how many customers we have. So the way that we do that, the way that we get the percent of a total is by using the decimal form. So in this case, we have to multiply the 0.28 that we got before by the 350 customers, which gives us, I believe it's 98. This is something that you can do in decimals and like any calculator. So I'm not gonna like check at this moment. Let me actually see. Okay, I'm not gonna check right now. I believe it's 98, but this is gonna stay the same. So all you have to do is multiply the probability or the percent in decimal form by the total. Again, like when you have multi-step problems, make sure you pay attention to what you're solving for and what step you're on. Because if you get ahead of yourself, you're gonna see the answer and you're gonna get confused. So this could have been again like a pretty easy question as long as you didn't trip up there. Oh, I also want to show you guys this one because this one, I want to show you guys cross elimination in the math section and kind of like what that looks like. So not that you have to, but you should. If you don't know, you can use Desmos to like check for you. But basically, you should know what like the basic graphs look like, right? So if you have a parabola, it looks kind of like a smile, right? It looks like that, like a U shape. If you have an exponential function, it looks like that. What is the key feature of an exponential function? It will never go negative. Like the basic form of an exponential function will never go negative. So if you have this, which is in the very basic form of a bx, there is no negative sign. There is no nothing, which means that will only ever give you a positive number. That is important because a and b both give you, well, sorry, because a gives you a negative number for a y value. You cannot get that with an exponential function unless you add a little negative sign, and there is no negative sign here. So right off the bat, you know that a is wrong. So that's the first thing. The second thing that you should know about an exponential function. When you have an exponent of 0, when you have an exponent of 0, so let's say 2 to the 0, 3 to the 0, 1 to the 0, it's equal to 1. Why does this matter? Because they're plugging in 0 for x values in all of these, right? So if we plug in 0, let me rewrite this, to 32 to 2x, we plug in 0 here, all we should get is 32 times 1, which means 32. So we can already take off b because it has 2. So just by doing that, we're already at like a 50% chance of getting the question right. And then if you look at the answer choices, What's different here is a -1. You never wanna waste time plugging in like numbers if they're all gonna be the same, so there's no reason why you should be plugging in 1 if they all have 64 for the output, right? So. Any number raised to a negative power, so let's say 2 to -1, 3 to -1, or 2 to -2. That is equivalent to 1 over this, but with a power turned positive, so that's 1 over 2 to the 1. This is 1 over 3 to the 1. This is 1 over 2 to the 2, right? So if over here, what we're plugging in is -1, so this is our different number, then all that we're getting is 32 times 1 to 2 to the 1. 1 over 2 to the 1, which is just 1/2. So 32 times 1/2 is 16. So our answer is B. Again, if you have any questions, I would put it in the chat, or if you're in person, come to us after. Just because I'm trying to kind of breeze through this. Tony, do you want to do this one, or do you want to do another?
Oh, or I can do just one last one, and it's not that it's kind of like that.
Okay.
But it's because we are kind of going, we will be reviewing more of these later. Last one soon. Is this true? Any questions you address? Also, you could always address it to Fabio and his office hours, which he will be having on Fridays. So something to look forward to. We're, so you're gonna do this quick volume one. So. On, sorry, I think that is all. For this one and then just look at it. Well, this application is we will be getting these technical difficulties sorted out, I'm sorry. Oh, finally, all right, perfect. Good.
There.
Perfect, all right. So. This is just a question, so the length of the edge of the base of a right square prism, right, that's kind of a loaded question. Loaded introduction, right? So let's think a right square prism is going to be a square. And then it kind of has height to it, right, so. That's what it means by a square prism, right? So a square and then you multiply it by its height, right? So a square has the same side length, so A times A times the height, right? So the side length times the height, or the side length cubed times the height. So then this is going to be 6 squared, right? Times the height, and that's going to be the volume, right? Now since the volume is 2880. And it's asking us for the height. So then she's gonna have to do this math, right? 2880 equals 36H. I go back to 36. H equals. And that's going to end up being 80, right? Just, you can check on your calculator or decimal, 2880 is going to be, or 2880 over 3 is gonna be 80, and that's gonna be the, right? Basically, you just have to be able to take the volume of a square prism and be able to apply that to this question. Does anyone else have any questions about this one, or? Move on. I know you guys did request some more, but as it is 11:57, we wanna already be closing out. But remember to, on Friday, there are office hours with Fabio, so. There any college advice, but also SAT questions, if you didn't get them here, you could show up there and maybe. Have your
Okay.
questions answered.
So as literally closing, obviously, thank you guys for coming, both in person and on Zoom. We hope that you guys learned something, and then just as Anthony said, if there's still things that, you know, you wanna go over, you're not sure about, you wanna reinforce, please go to Fabio. If you're in person, you could stay and ask us. But we are not gonna keep you any longer. If you guys could please like follow us on our social media, so like YouTube, Insta, TikTok, even that would be really, really nice. And we hope to see you back next week on Monday. Next week on Monday, I'm pretty sure we're gonna get back to our normal kind of teaching routine-ish. I'm not really sure. But I believe we'll get back to that instead of just practice test review and practice test taking. Okay, so that's pretty much it. You guys are free to go.